Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Mad Science Lab podcast. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist. Today, we're here to continue with the My Thoughts series, and here to break down the Buffalo Bills is Justin Boone. Justin, thanks for joining me.
I appreciate you having me, and normally I don't let my fandom get out too much, but today I wore the hat, I got the shirt, I got the cup going. You asked for it, so I'm bringing it all today.
It's all right. We're off to like I said, I told you I've got a whole bunch of these scheduled in a row. We're off to a terrible start. I already got my intro backwards. That's why the hesitation there before I hit my intro. Not off to a running start by me, so it can only go downhill from here for the next 6 podcasts. So I'm sure everyone, especially those of us in Canada, like both of us, know where to find you. Would you like to tell everyone where they can find your work, just in case they don't know?
Everything is still available for free over at The Score. I'm almost shocked that they keep giving it away for free, even after I, won the most accurate Fantasy Pros competition and stuff. But everything is over there. The podcast, the Score Fantasy Football Podcast as well. And we'll have the draft kit up pretty soon in the next month or so. Lots of preview content, though, coming out before the draft kit gets up. So just making sure we're getting everybody ready. We got the schedule release coming, we're going to have all that, lots of content on that too. So we're just making sure at this point now we pretty much know the rosters. There's a few veterans still hanging out there that could shake things up, but for the most part, we know the rosters and we can start to really get ready, for the fantasy season.
I've got to say it's May and I'm exhausted already, not even into fantasy football, and I'm already tired. I started with the hat on forward, but by 3 or 4 more hours, it'll be backwards and I'll be face down on this desk during the podcast. So that's
why for me it's always backwards. So there you go.
I only hear you. I listen at work, so I don't get to see anyone. So the first time I see them, I'm like, that's what that guy looks like. You have the mental projection of what you think they look like, because I just drive around 8 hours a day listening to podcasts, but never really get to see too many. So
well, I'm not always wearing bright blue like this, but I like the look today. I think I'm pulling it off.
I like it. All right. It matches the microphone.
There you go. Yeah.
Let's jump into the Buffalo Bills here. There will be not much debate here in the quarterback room. We have consensus top 2 quarterback Josh Allen and a backup that has the same last name as him, and that's the only way he's going to find his way onto the field. Injury, or if they send the wrong Allen out on the field by mistake. What are your thoughts on Josh here?
Yeah, Kyle Allen, I'm not really loving that as a backup situation. I kind of wish they did a little better. I was a little happier, even, with Trubisky or, with Case Keenum. I thought they had better options the last couple of years. But if Josh Allen goes down, I think the whole thing's going to fall apart anyway. For Allen, one of the things we need to see here, and I think the Bills are talking this way, and I think some of their actions this offseason are to make sure that he doesn't get hurt. And they've kind of made some pickups, getting Damian Harris, getting Latavius Murray. We'll talk more about the running backs in a second, but getting some of these bigger backs that can maybe take on some of the goal line work and maybe grind out some of those yards so that Allen's not always running and not always taking big hits. Now, some people are worried about that for his fantasy stock, and I think it could be a little bit problematic, but you could go back a couple of years to 2020. He had about 300 fewer rushing yards than he's had the last 2 seasons. Last 2 seasons has been over 700 yards. That year he was in the 400s, and he was still right up there as one of the top fantasy quarterbacks, top 2 or top 3, right? So I'm not too worried about his overall value, whether he finishes, 1, 2, 3. I currently have him as the top guy, but I think regardless, he is going to be near the top. And another reason is because you got to look back to last year. There's 2 points in the fantasy season when I think people kind of forget a little bit about, what happened. And one is right after the season. Right after the season, I don't think people are doing the research to look at the year going forward. So looking, for example, when I put out my rankings in January, my way too early rankings, looking at 2023, I'm going over contract situations and all kinds of stuff. And the casual fantasy fan does not need to be doing that in January. I don't blame them. Dynasty managers, I think it's beneficial. Redraft, you're getting a head start on people, but you don't really have to be doing that, right? The other time is this point in the year when after the draft, You start to know the rosters, like I said earlier. And then people just remember the names. They look and they say Josh Allen, and they forget, they look at the production last year, but they forget the context around some of that production. And for Allen, he hurt that elbow. He played hurt
Yeah.
for a big portion of the year. And as a Bills fan, I watched a lot of those games. The offense wasn't as consistent, didn't always have the same kind of pop. Early in the season, they were firing on all cylinders. It was amazing. Later in the year, it wasn't quite as good. So if he loses a little bit of rushing production, but if he stays healthy, if that arm's good to go, and we see that get boosted up, maybe by the arrival of a guy like Dalton Kincaid, who I'm sure we're going to talk about, then I think it all is going to balance out. And I think Allen's going to end up being a top 3 fantasy quarterback per game, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. Like I said, it doesn't really matter where you're paying to get him. All those 3 quarterbacks, him, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, they're all kind of going in the same range.
Yeah, people forget and they tend to just check back in and look at the end of year numbers and not realize what happened. But one thing I will say, the dude needs to learn to slide. Get down.
It's true. I mean, the consistency, though, of Allen, right? Like, I think he only had 4 games last year where he was under 20 fantasy points. Like, that's what you're looking for fantasy, right? Like, to just be that consistent all year long, to constantly get that massive boost from your quarterback position. That's why guys like him are going so high. And I think it's justified. I don't normally pay up second round prices for guys, but I definitely think he belongs like up near that range.
Moving on to an interesting running back trio. Damian Harris was brought in. I kind of see him as Devin Singletary 2.0. I did some deep dives, and I don't notice that much of a difference. James Cook, I had hoped, would just get this job to himself. And then still lingering is Nyheim Hines, taking away some of the pass volume. I had originally intended to write an article on how Devin Singletary was a screaming value, and that evolved into how, no, never mind, I think it's Damian Harris, and that turned into they both are kind of the same person. Maybe James Cook is the value, and that's kind of where I landed after looking at all the numbers. Harris and Singletary seem to be pretty similar. I'm hoping that they turn this over to Cook and Singletary or Harris. I can't even get the two of them differentiate. They're so similar. I'm just hoping Cooks really gets the role here. I think Harris should just be a complimentary piece, and they should just turn it all over to Cook. What do you think?
In terms of, who's the most explosive back, who's the game-breaking back, who's the real pass-catching back, all that fantasy goodness, it's certainly Cook. But going back to what I was saying about Josh Allen, we got to look at what the team is telling us. And it's not just that they brought in veteran backs, because you assume they were going to bring in, if they didn't keep Singletary, they were going to bring in someone else there. It's the type of backs that they've gone out, and it's just the complete opposite of Cook, right? Like Harris, a little bit bigger of a guy. Latavius Murray, who they just recently signed, like
I forgot him. I completely forgot Murray.
Yeah, the hard yards, and the knock on Cook is that he's not great between the tackles. Maybe he could improve, going into another year, another off season. Maybe he gets better in that area, but really he's that explosive pass catching guy. And you're going to now have Harris, who I think is going to get the first shot to be the bigger back and potentially get some real valuable touches around the goal line. So he's kind of interesting to me. You mentioned that you kind of went over him at one point. I think Latavius Murray is going to be a distant third. I think he'll need a Harris injury in order to get, real enough touches in order to be really fantasy relevant. And Nyheim Hines will sort of be the insurance policy behind Cook, but I think he's sort of way in the background as well. Not really a guy that's ever been consistent in terms of fantasy production over a long haul. So Cook is intriguing, but where he's going in drafts, I just haven't been getting a lot of him. And really Harris, not that he's going to be Jamal Williams and score 17 touchdowns, but if we take a little bit away from Allen, if that's something that the Bills want to do and take a little bit away from him around the goal line, and we give some of that to the running backs, I think you could see Damian Harris have 8, 9, maybe even 10 touchdowns this season. So that's somebody that I think is interesting to me, going well outside the top 100 picks. I've been grabbing a lot of Damian Harris because I think he could be a sneaky fantasy producer this year.
Yeah, it seems like he might be the value here based on how you're projecting it to shake out. I think maybe mine with Cook was a little bit more wishful thinking than it was projection. So I might be switching my gears here. You're right, though. Cook is starting to get a little too pricey for my liking, and it might be time to acquire some Damian Harris shares. Moving on to an interesting wide receiver room that sure is, well, it's got a lot of quantity. I don't know about quality. It's got Stephon Diggs. No one's going to dispute him. He's the easy one. We've got Gabe Davis, one of the most frustrating players in fantasy football history, I believe. Khalil Shakir, who I had high hopes for as a rookie, but he never really seemed to live up to it. And then we have a whole bunch of just guys: Trent Sherfield, Deontay Hardy or Harris or whatever name he's going by this weekend, Desmond Patton, Isaiah Coulter, and rookie out of Florida, Justin Shorter. Diggs is the alpha. I know he's aging, but aside from that, what do you think happens here behind him?
Well, I think with Diggs, we do have to remember, and I don't think this is going to be a problem, but I think it warrants mentioning that at the end of last season, he was not very happy at the end of that playoff loss, and he left immediately, didn't talk to the media. And with a guy with his personality, a real strong mind, you have to be just a little worried about that, especially when he did not show up for the Bills offseason stuff so far. And like I said, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think he's going to show up. I think he's going to perform. I'm still drafting him and projecting him that way, but it's just a little something in the back of my mind that, if we heard a trade request over the summer, or if we heard that he wasn't happy or holding out at camp or something, wouldn't shock me. But right now we're going to operate as if everything's going to be fine because, like I said, I think it's going to be. I'm really hoping that it's going to be. So if he's there, this is a guy that's been a top 5 fantasy receiver and per game production for fantasy. He's going to continue to do that. He is a huge part of this offense. He is by far the most talented. So he'll continue to be a great fantasy asset. Gabe Davis was inconsistent. I know a lot of people want to point to the ankle injury with him last year, and maybe that impacted him. But also, and I keep bringing up this name, Dalton Kincaid. They brought in another pass-catching weapon. Maybe we start to see a little more from Khalil Shakir, who is somebody I also really like, a guy who flashed when he got opportunity last year. The only game when he played over 50% of the snaps had 75 yards and a touchdown. During the playoffs, had 91 yards over the 2 playoff games. So he's somebody that the front office has talked up quite a bit. He's somebody that I think is going to get more opportunity this season, and I'm excited for that. And I worry a little bit about Gabe Davis as someone that is just going to be that boomer bust kind of receiver that we've seen. And last year, there were a lot more bust weeks than there were boom weeks, unfortunately. So hopefully we get a little more from Davis. But right now, I'm kind of tempering my expectations with him. But I like what they did going down the depth chart there. I mean, Deontay Hardy is somebody that during his time in New Orleans showed he can stretch the field, a really fast guy. They need somebody like that. I think that's going to be great. And then Trent Sherfield's sort of like the backup plan for Hardy, right? Also a field stretcher, maybe if there's an injury or just let those 2 guys compete in camp. And then Shorter's a big body, maybe can help out around the red zone, maybe sort of Gabe Davis insurance potentially, whether he gets hurt or doesn't really, improve at all. Maybe they give him an opportunity, but he's also kind of a long shot, right? Was he a day 3 pick? So we can't expect too much from him. So overall, I like this receiving core. I'm trying to hold off about talking about Dalton Kincaid, who is a tight end.
That was going to be my question.
Is going to get a lot of opportunity at receiver.
No. Well, my question was going to be about Kincaid, and we'll use that to transition. We've got Kincaid and Knox here in the tight end room. My question was going to be, what do you think the chances are that Dalton Kincaid actually functions as the second best pass catcher in this offense behind Diggs?
I think they're really high. And I think in the last few years, we've seen that the old adage about, rookie tight ends not producing, it's kind of going away a little bit, right? And not that everybody's going to be a Kyle Pitts and come out and have 1,000 yards as a rookie, but we've seen guys like Pat Freiermuth in his rookie season put up a good fantasy total. We've seen Greg Dulcich last year. Cade Otton for the Bucks had some games. Chigakonkwo was somebody that down the stretch last season had some nice performances. So we're seeing these rookies, especially the pass catching guys, get opportunities. It's because offensive coordinators are smart and they realize when they have these pass catching weapons, don't force them to learn the whole position like they used to in the past. Figure out what they do well and let them get on the field and do that. And for somebody like Kincaid, he is an outstanding pass catching threat. He is a guy that you can move all over the formation as a mismatch weapon. You can put him in the slot, which I think he is going to get a lot of opportunity there. When you look at what the Bills had last season at receiver, in terms of a real slot guy, they brought back Cole Beasley late in the year. That's where they were at. So now you have somebody like Kincaid that can win there. I think he is going to be a great weapon for them. And I think he's going to be a really big part of the offense. And Dawson Knox, unfortunately, not much of a threat for him. Dawson Knox had a lot of opportunity, never really put it together consistently over a long stretch. So I think now that Kincaid's there, it's very exciting what he could bring to this offense. And like you said, in fantasy, after those elite guys, we're trying to look for somebody that could be the de facto number 2 receiver in their offense, especially when it's an offense as good as this Bills passing attack. And yes, I think Kincaid could be that guy as early as this season.
I think how it shakes out, you might see a lot of 2 tight end sets from Buffalo. You're going to see Kincaid acting as kind of a large slot receiver, and you'll see Knox in as the blocking tight end. I think that's how it best shakes out, because Kincaid, not a blocking tight end. That's for damn sure.
Definitely not.
So, all right. I know it's early, but based on where you think ADP will land, you do much underdog best ball or anything like that early?
No, I haven't really jumped into it too much. I always look at the ADPs just to get an idea of where players are going, but no, I haven't jumped into it too much yet.
Well, based on where you think these guys are going to be going come redraft season, who on this team are you going to be targeting in a lot of leagues?
I think from what I've said, people can probably take it away and decipher it pretty quickly. I'll get a little bit of
Kincaid written down already.
Definitely Kincaid. We'll see his ADP continue to rise. It might have been a guy that, casual fantasy fans weren't, as familiar with. And then all of a sudden they saw him go the end of the first round, and now they can start to get excited, and we'll see that ADP crank up over the next couple months and over the summer, especially when he gets on the field for training camp and we start to see him make some plays. I'll have some Diggs, some Allen, but like I said, I don't normally spend up that high on quarterback. Yeah. I've been more willing in the last couple of years. If there's a pocket, I always recommend, if you get to that third round or so, and there's really not a player that you like, if there's not, right now, I don't know if there's a tight end that I would want to take in the third round because Kelsey's going way earlier. And I think Mark Andrews has a lot of target competition this year, which bumps him down a little bit. And if you look and you get to a spot, if you're in a snake draft and you don't really like any of the running backs, any of the receivers, I'm not against paying up and getting a great quarterback and then filling those other positions as you go. So I'll get a little bit of Diggs and Allen, and where I can pair them together, that would be great as well. But overall, it's going to be Damian Harris getting that great value. I'm going to try to take these kind of longer shots. Khalil Shakir, I want to see what he can be in this offense. I think there's a lot of talent there. So I think those are the big ones. And then obviously Dalton Kincaid, who is somebody that right now is a late round tight end, but come the summer is probably going to be maybe inside the top 100 picks. That wouldn't shock me at all as people get really excited about him.
All right. And on the opposite side, who's someone at their ADP that you think you're going to be avoiding on this team?
I mean, I'm surprised I'm saying this. I don't want to speak negatively of the Bills, but Gabe Davis, like we said, I don't love that inconsistency. I think there's a chance that he could bring it together still, but based on some of the other weapons that they've brought in, and maybe Cook being more of a pass catching threat this year, I'm worried about the consistent targets that Davis is going to get. So he's somebody that I haven't really gone after where he's going. And then Cook, also someone like we talked about that I don't know that he has the touchdown upside. I don't know that he's going to get, the 20 carry games. He's not going to get that kind of thing. I think he's going to be more of, maxing out at maybe 15 touches a game, and he'll have the receiving production that will help, but he's not going to have that big touchdown total. So that's why I think those two are going in sort of the 7th round or so.
Yeah.
And not really a range where I'm grabbing either of them.
No, Davis. I can't do it. I did this with Davis once. I can't do it again. It's just too inconsistent. But all right. Well, thank you, Justin. It's nice to see someone who's actually passionate about their team and knows his stuff. You want to take another chance here? Tell everyone where to find your stuff in case they can't read the poster behind you.
Well, I will say thank you so much for having me on and for reaching out. Love that we connected, love that a fellow Canadian doing this. It's always awesome to get to talk to you. And like we said, I wish we had more time to talk. Yeah. We were going on a little bit before the show, but I'm sure we'll do this again, and maybe we'll have you on the Score Fantasy Football podcast, and
anytime
we could talk a little more then. That's available everywhere. You can get it through the Score app. You can get it on all your different podcast platforms, or go check out my Twitter page at Justin Boone. I'll have links to everything in there, or you can go to the Score and continue to get my content for free over at the Score, whether it's in the NFL section or the fantasy news section. There's a few different ways that you can get my stuff on the app.
I'll be listening to it and using it as usual. I try to do a little more research now than just using your draft kit in my drafts, but I still have it handy. I can't just walk in with the Justin Boone cheat sheet anymore. People start to call me on it. I have to do my own work now, I guess, but that's how it goes.
It's good to get multiple opinions. I've always said that I think it's important to, take a lot of different pieces of the puzzle and try to put together your own view of it. Sounds like you're doing that now. So
well, no,
that's the best approach.
The fantasy pros, they frown on me just cutting and pasting your rankings into my rankings. So I kind of have to do it for myself now.
I wondered
so much. Yeah.
When I retired from the contest, I wondered if anyone took that approach, whether they just took a look at my rankings on the score and just filled them into fantasy pros. And if anyone did,
change a few guys around.
Yeah, I wonder how they finished if they did do that. I hope they did well.
Copy and paste your rankings and end up ahead of you. Change one guy and he won and I beat you, but no, that'd be too funny. All right. Well, thank you, Justin. It was a pleasure. Like I said, I listen to you nonstop at work whenever you're out. You always seem to, I don't hear you nearly as much during the summer. I feel like you don't record as much during the summer.
Yeah, we'll start to ramp up a little bit now, but I've done a better job the last couple seasons of having a little more work-life balance in the off season and actually taking some weeks for myself and logging off a little bit. So there's still lots to do. When we get to this time of year, this is when we're really all in. February, when it's real quiet, we don't have as many episodes. And, there's a little pocket sort of before the draft where you finish up the free agency stuff and before you get to the draft preview stuff where I could take a little bit of time to myself. But now we're kind of all in. So there'll be plenty of episodes. We'll start ramping up in the summer to multiple episodes a week. And then during the season to even more to 3, 4, 5 episodes a week. I don't know what we've settled on this year, but there'll be plenty of content coming out.
Yep. The first episode I ever heard was you and Fitzy, and I'm going to keep listening to it religiously until one day I hear my voice on there with you. So,
well, it might be sooner rather than later.
I sure hope so. Well, thank you again, Justin, for coming on. It's nice to meet you. It's actually funny. At Player Profiler, there was another guy that I work with a lot, Jack Kavanaugh. Come to find out, you think he's way across. He's 35 minutes away. I didn't know that. Of all the people, I'm talking to a guy 35 minutes down the highway. So you never know. So, all right. Well, this is my thoughts on the Buffalo Bills with Justin Boone. Thank you, Justin, for joining me. Again, I am Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and this has been the Mad Science Lab podcast. Thank you, Justin, and take care, everyone.